And can I now introduce you to Richard and Stephanie, who will tell you more about the fabulous work they have done at Medway.
Excuse me.
So, hi everybody. My name is Richard Snowdon. My colleague Stephanie Alexander. We're both business intelligence business partners at Medway Foundation Trust. I suppose our story starts just
17
over
months ago.
Yeah, very much so. Our demand and capacity modelling in the past has been a bit lackluster, I think would be a good word. So a big part of trying to get more engagement with our colleagues across the Trust was to demonstrate its usefulness and to get it embedded into some of the more official planning processes. So before that, this was kind of the situation that we were in. There are a fair few different demand and capacity models across the board that have been used over the last few years. IST model, kind of more specialist ones around outpatients, cancer, etc., etc. The latest one that is used as a core model is a lot more versatile, and it was a big selling point for us. There was a great gulf in kind of the understanding of what demand and capacity even is, even to the level of service managers in our trust. The old staple, which I think is going to be coming up a fair few times, already has already, is lack of engagement. So there's always people standing on their burning platforms. They haven't got time to deal with these kind of things. Part of the kind of overcome the obstacle was to demonstrate the usefulness of the tool. The limited stakeholder engagement is kind of more specific in that it's around the actual service managers that, like you say, they're at the coalface. They're the ones that need to have the best kind of grip on this kind of thing. And historically there was kind of a lack of strategic direction, but that all changed just over a year ago.
So 17 months ago, Medway Foundation Trust looked at their modelling and their capacity and understood that they weren't actually getting it right. And the consequence of that was we became a trust with a significant financial deficit, which we needed to address, but we also weren't necessarily delivering our capacity and our demand and the service that we should have been delivering to our patients. 17 months ago, we were asked if we would go on the demand and capacity courses, which we jumped at the chance to do. Unfortunately, it was some distance, wasn't it?
Yeah. So there were a few cohorts that are up in London, but the cohorts that were available at the time of our joining were in Bristol, and Tenterton, I think was the other one. Yeah, Taunton. Geography isn't my thing. So yeah, it was a few early starts for the pair of us, but very rewarding.
Yeah, 5 hours there, then we did the course, and sometimes it could be quite intense. I think the comments that have been made before, certainly by Hugh, the tool is important, and there were days where it was very technically challenging. But the most important part about this demand and capacity is actually the engagement. It's getting the people on board to actually work with you to actually deliver their services more effectively.
And I think the course kind of demonstrated it very nicely, because it was 4 modules, only one of them was about the model. The other 3 were about making people more switched on around demand and capacity planning. Okay, so our first step was to essentially overcome the various obstacles that we had. A big thing for us was making sure that we were using one actual tool across the board, so that it was a consistent approach, and that was very much helped by it being embedded into the business planning process.
Absolutely right.
18,
and I think, as our previous slides have showed, we actually didn't have our demand and capacity modelling correct. All different services were using all different tools. There wasn't one strategic method to actually deliver demand and capacity, and as an executive team, I think that was quite worrying, so they needed to take that forward. Indeed.
The stakeholder engagement obviously was an obstacle to overcome, and we kind of resolved it with a combination of the third and the fifth point. Actually having a proper strategic direction, having it embedded in the business planning for 18-19 was almost an in to make sure demand capacity was actually a lot more at the forefront of people's minds. And having the people higher up in the trust hierarchy on board with that was a big factor on making sure that the people at the coalface were properly motivated, encouraged to engage with using these models. And a big factor of it is that we're both on the business intelligence team. It's a big factor around the modelling and demand capacity in general to get proper buy-in from ourselves. So we kind of initiated it. But it's a two-way street when it comes to just looking at populating the tool. We can certainly do the beginning part, the demand, getting the historical information across whatever period of time you want to look at. But the big kind of pitch, I suppose, that we went with the workshops that we held for service managers and general managers was we've got the historical intelligence, but they've got the local intelligence. They're the ones, they run the service, they know what capacity they're capable of providing at the moment, and using the tools to demonstrate that they can actually find where their gaps are and where they need to focus was a big factor in that.
So as a trust, the approach was taken by our executive teams that actually this would be rolled out corporately, the methodology would be adopted by all of our services. Rather than just targeting individual services, it was at a very top level, strategic level, that then filtered down to get the engagement of the service managers and general managers to actually move this forward. To do that, we had some workshops, and our workshops were very much driven by maximising that engagement, getting people to talk to us. And there was a lot of reticence. A lot of people felt they'd actually been there before. But what became actually quite clear within the workshop was that actually people didn't understand their demand, and they didn't understand their capacity. They always, when they were looking at their capacity, worked on 42 weeks a year, as opposed to 42 weeks a year, but let's also take into consideration failure of equipment, a consultant going off sick. So they hadn't actually strategically planned in the eventualities that they needed to plan in with their capacity. Also, to deliver our services, we were very much reliant on ad hoc capacity. And that basically said, well, you clearly don't understand your capacity if you're using ad hoc, because if you're using ad hoc, with the demand and capacity models, we should be looking at business cases to actually make that business as usual for us.
Indeed, it was quite eye-opening, the number of specialties that had basically routine ad hoc capacity. So it's not really ad hoc if you're having to do it all the time,
Absolutely.
is it?
So conceptually, they didn't have an understanding of it. But actually, when they actually went out to the services, we also found that, you know, there were issues around actually were we accurately recording all of our clinics, or were consultants perhaps taking it upon themselves to actually run additional clinics that we weren't aware of. So we started to unpick this situation that we needed to actually resolve, and it opened a mindset actually to the people, the service managers and general managers, that actually we need to better understand this. We need to be able to dig deeper into this. And that was the whole point of the demand and capacity models, was actually to open that door so we could dig deep to look for opportunities.
I think a thing to touch on though, and Jane touched on it in her presentation, was it's not kind of a one size fits all, as it were. So whilst our kind of ask was to roll it across the specialties, when it came to the workshops, we had people that were difficult to engage with. So we did some more bespoke things, kind of looking at kind of the proper, the kind of the headliners, as it were. They didn't want to play the dice game. I was disappointed.
So structurally, Medway have a system where their services are supported by business partners, human resources, finance, and BP business partners, business intelligence partners, which I think works quite well. In Medway Foundation Trust, we have 3 business intelligence partners, and we're each aligned to individual services. So they were our cohort. We all had our own little pot to own and to actually move forward with.
Indeed, indeed. It was good that we had the in with the business planning, but it also meant that we could actually impart to them how important it is to look at demand and capacity modelling on a much more regular basis than just like annually, ideally monthly, if not more often, because things change all the time.
I think also what's interesting is, you know, we in BI, we can populate those models, but we don't have the ground intelligence that's required from the operational teams to actually see how they're going to deliver that. But we can actually open those conversations to them, and I think we did quite successfully do that. But there was a certain amount of belligerence. We had to keep going, going back and forward. But now I think it works quite well.
Indeed. I think it's kind of demonstrated in the way things are being done this time around and on a more regular basis. I think this slide is more just what we've been talking about. Got ahead of ourselves.
So I think what's interesting is it was a quick turnaround.
It certainly was.
We actually started our demand and capacity training in July. And were due to complete in January, which we did. Unfortunately, the demands of the Trust were that we actually had to escalate that. So on the 5th of September, we had senior executives sign up to the individual models that we knew we had to go forward. And there was also a timetable to support the delivery of the planning round as well, which meant that we had to crack on straight away before we'd finished our training. And to do this, we had sign off on the 5th. And in the afternoon, we had our first workshop. We had 2 models. We weren't sure which ones we were going to go with at the time.
Yeah, but it was good that we went with the core model because it's very versatile. You can do all sorts with it, and it's really helped for the kind of consistent approach. The different services can do it in different ways. They can put their capacity in how they want, as it were, like what kind of makes sense to them. They can look at it kind of on a basic kind of annual thing, or if they want to go into the nitty gritty, they can look at kind of particular periods where their capacity is gonna take a bit of a nosedive, like they've got a consultant that's retiring and they haven't planned anything yet, that kind of thing. So we've spoken a bit about the challenges, but I think this kind of sums them up quite nicely. The first 2 are quite similar to each other, but kind of there are people across all trusts, I'd say, that they don't like the unknown. They don't really like the new. They want to kind of stick with things that they know. So kind of introducing a whole new model was an interesting challenge, but we got there. It's universally used now. You've always got your, oh God, here we go again, people with your change fatigue. But with them, it's kind of the key is to kind of demonstrate the value of using this approach, actually showing kind of the benefits, that kind of thing.
But I think it also comes down to actually having the resources to support your operational teams. We, as I say, we were tasked as business partners to be that resource. So we continually knocked at their door. There was a certain amount of reticence because I think that's systemic in the NHS. People don't like change, but we had to make changes. and we just kept knocking on the door, really.
And we were flexible as well.
Yeah.
So it was rolled out that there were workshops on these like 3 days, and this is what's going to happen. But for those people that couldn't make it, there was mop-up sessions and kind of more bespoke sessions, so that everybody was on board and understood the benefits and what was needed to happen.
So briefly, I think I should just mention that the tool, although not the most important part, it's always the engagement. We had to make sure that we had the tool right, and we had to be able to actually populate the tools for the whole trust, and be able to refresh that data regularly and very easily to supply to our services. Which the BI team, a developer in our BI team, who's also one of the business partners, managed to do successfully. We now tap into a number of different databases to populate those tools with our demand, and we can update 40 tools within a couple of hours. So we can actually refresh the data very quickly to get it back out there. The issue is actually then let's start looking at the capacity. So it's very much on-ground intelligence to look at that capacity and put it into the tool.
Indeed, and the other big factor was engagement at kind of a senior level. And we're quite fortunate in our trust in that, in addition to ourselves that are graduates of the Train the Trainer programme, we have someone in organisational development who's been on the programme, and one of our directors of operations has been on the programme. He in particular has been pretty instrumental in getting people on board with using the models. It's kind of part and parcel of PTL meetings with the RTT ones in particular, that service manager are expected to have looked at the demand and capacity models through the model, so that they know where their gaps are. So I guess now it's what's next. That was all kind of in the past. We're now kind of at that point again with delightful business planning. And we're in a lot better position this time around, because we've got that consistent approach now. It is using the same models as before. They've been used on a regular basis throughout the last year.
And I think what's nice now is actually our operational teams are actually asking for refresh models.
Indeed.
So they're actually looking at it, they're actually using it, and they're actually engaged.
It's music to our ears from our business intelligence point of view that if people are asking questions about reports in general or anything that the business intelligence team provides, then that's a win, because it means they're looking at it. If they're looking at the data, then you can see where you can make improvements.
Absolutely. So moving on from that, what we actually discovered was what looked on paper was that we actually didn't necessarily have the capacity to meet our demand. And that led to a further piece of work to develop a clinical utilisation report. And that report was used, if you want to click on, this is a copy or just a snapshot of it. So this report has been used to support the demand and the capacity by actually looking at how many clinic template slots we have on our system and how effectively they are actually being utilised. So are we actually booking to our full capacity, or do we have certain clinics that are actually have a capacity of 8 patients who are only seeing 3 regularly? In which case, why are we running those clinics? Shouldn't we be consolidating those down? Secondly, we started looking at our DNA rates and cancellation rates as well. So if we're looking at our services and we have a high level of DNA rates, then we need to understand why we have a high level of DNA rates, and we have to understand as a service how we're going to deal with that. Also, if we're struggling with cancellations with patients, why are they cancelling, or why are we cancelling? Because if we're cancelling services, obviously we're not delivering that care to our patients.
And the development of this tool is a fabulous demonstration what the demand and capacity modelling has led to.
Absolutely.
This report can look. You can have a retrospective look, and it also looks at the future weeks as well. So what ones you've kind of booked.
Yeah.
So you can basically see, oh, this week we haven't utilised all of our clinics, or dare I say, because of DNA rates that we expect, we can book more people onto said clinics, that kind of thing.
So what we saw was we did have high DNA rates. So how did we go about dealing with those? We looked at the challenge services, and then we would overbook our clinics to compensate for that DNA rates. We've also, as I said, started looking at actually whether the clinic was viable, were we running it at a loss, in which case should we consolidate and cut out a couple of clinics as well.
Mm. So yeah. It's kind of a brave new world, isn't it? I think from the Medway point of view, we're in a lot better position. It's kind of been embedded properly, the whole demand and capacity planning, and the fact that we've got the clinic utilisation tool as a benefit of looking at it has been a big win.
So Rich is absolutely right. I mean, we started our journey 17 months ago, and it was challenging. The engagement was challenging. We're now, as I say, that much further forward, and I think we've done it quite successfully as a trust. We have that engagement now, we have the buy-in to actually deliver it, and we were talking on the train this morning coming up, and we feel quite proud of our trust that we've actually taken it so far in such a short period of time over the whole trust as opposed to just an individual service.
It was certainly quite intense at the beginning. We had to deliver those workshops, I think, before we did the 3rd or 4 modules in the actual training, so that was kind of eye-opening, having to do the training before you finished the training to train people.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
it worked out.
It did, yeah.
I think that is it. Oh no, what have we got next?
Yeah.
Like I say, we've had the buy-in from senior in that the expectation is that the demand and capacity models are reviewed regularly. We are next week, aren't we? We're delivering some demand and capacity training with our local CCG, so that they are they're more cognizant of the modelling that we use. We're sharing methodologies such as now.
Well, that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So we've got the engagement now of our integrated care partnership. It's again a long journey, but I think, you know, to improve relations across the health economy, it's important they understand how much work we're putting into our demand and capacity, and we have been invited to actually present to them, so that's really positive. That's the 24th. We're also now on the planning round again, and I mentioned planning and number crunching because I'm a BI person, but it is all about quality of care for patients.
Indeed.
And we're starting that journey all over again in a much better place.
Indeed. There we go.